All right, I would like to call our March version of the CAB to order. And if we can, let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance. And Carla, why don't you lead us in that tonight? The flag is yonder. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, and I forgot to do the quorum, so let's step back a bit and do that. Chris Wood. Here. Denise Davis. Here. Carla Werner. Here. And that's it. So we have 4, and that gives us a quorum. All right, we will start with general public comment. Anyone in the room? We start with the room first. Aaron, are you going to give? Yes, if you want to, I would. You submitted your thing, so why don't you talk? Oh, are these comments all related to agenda items? Oh, okay, then good. So any general public comment online? All right. How do we see that they?
They should be raising their hands.
Okay, and it will pop a hand. So yes, if anyone online, we have a new thing. All right, John Davidson. Alexandra will.
Hello. Can you hear me? Oh, yes.
Yes.
So I can't see any pictures of anybody else online. I've never seen a Zoom meeting like this. I just
let me interrupt you a moment, John. We are using a new webinar form called Workplace. Is that right? Anyway, it prevents us from being Zoom bombed, I guess is the word, which happened at one of our meetings. So now, instead of you having to unmute, Alexandra will have to throw the microphone officially toward you on the computer. So go ahead, John.
Okay, I don't have a lengthy comment. I provided to Denise there a suggestion of some rules that the county could make for use of the pathways countywide. I'm finding that that use of the pathways in incline extremely dangerous, with silent motorized vehicles using them. And I think the county needs to take a look at this, and I understand it's on the agenda. I pulled up the meeting notice that says Incline Village Crystal Bay Citizen Advisory Board meeting agenda, and there is nothing there except the link to the Zoom. So I don't know what the agenda is, but I understand that that is on the agenda to talk about later, and I'm here.
Okay, thank you, John. And we will be talking about that later. And just for purposes of keeping all the notes sort of organized, it helps if you can save your comments until we get to the agenda item. And if you go to the Washoe County website, look up CAB, and then click on Incline Village Crystal Bay CAB, and then the calendar and March. It shows you a link to the agenda. Page 1 is all of the rules, but page 2 has the specific agenda items.
Thank you.
Citizens Advisory Board. I think I'm just always typing CAB. Yeah. All right. Pamela Tigdinas.
Hi there. I just wanted to have a couple of announcements. One is to let folks know in Incline Village, Crystal Bay, along with Washoe County folks, that there will be a TRPA meeting on Wednesday, a general board meeting. And on the agenda, they will be discussing the Placer County Tahoe area plan. And it's instructive for a few reasons, because we're obviously in the midst of discussing the Washoe County Tahoe area plan. Placer is a few months ahead of us in the process. And I just wanted to bring this to everyone's attention because it is going to be very important for us to understand that once it reaches the Tahoe Regional Planning Agency, there is a template created that they then use to move around the rest of the lake to El Dorado, to Douglas. And this is a really important opportunity to share public comment. So Wednesday, March 26th, I can put it in chat if that's helpful. And if folks are not aware, I wanted to bring their attention to a brand new article that ran in the Reno Gazette-Journal today, but it has been running in other places around California regarding Tahoe and the environment and some wildfire analysis. It's an investigative piece, which is really worthwhile, and I would encourage everyone to read it. I will also share the link in the chat session. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else for general public comment? All right. We'll go to agenda item number 4 then, which is announcements from Commissioner Hill. I don't see Commissioner Hill online, so do you have anything?
I do not.
Okay. All right, then we'll go to agenda item number 5. And do we have anyone from the sheriff or the fire department? Oh, here we go. Nikki up from the rear. Come on up to the podium, please.
So guys, I'm Deputy Eric Pruitt. I'm with the Sheriff's Office. I'm assigned to the Incline Village Patrol team up here. From the numbers I got, it does not look like they've been updated since the last week's CAB meeting that anybody participated. Was it last week's? 4 weeks. Okay. I'm not sure if they've been updated. I can kind of give you guys an idea of that. We've had, I can give you some kind of incidental ideas of some of the different things that we've had in the last couple weeks going on and stuff like that, and some of the enforcement action that we've taken in those regards. We've seen a general decrease in overall offenses based on the stats that I was emailed for this. Unfortunately, I didn't know this was going to be my thing today. Otherwise, I could have prepared a little more. We've seen a decrease in overall assault offenses, in burglaries, and then counterfeiting, loitering and vagrancy, destructive damage and vandalism, disorderly conduct. All those stats are down. We have seen a increase in DUI, but that's also due to an increase in DUI enforcement. I know it's one of the 4 pillars that the sheriff has pushed forward, is that he wants to decrease DUI crash and fatalities by increasing DUI enforcement, having us go out and aggressively pursue DUIs. Kind of incidental to that, in the last week or so, I was involved in both of the incidents where we had DUI incidents where one of the subjects, when I stopped him, fled the vehicle. Immediately upon knowing he was going to get pulled over and took off, and was like, as we're telling him stop, tried to fight with us. When we caught him and ended up being tased and arrested, we went through the process, prosecuted him for DUI and those sort of things. He was also in possession of controlled substances during that. So it's not just an alcohol related DUI thing that we're seeing. It's also controlled substance related DUIs from cocaine and marijuana and those sort of things. I've even had contacts up here where I had a gentleman who was using MDMA and mushrooms and then operating a vehicle while under the influence of alcohol as well, just in the last few months. So we also had another one where last week somebody in the Southwood area ran a stop sign and then took off at a super high rate of speed with another vehicle. It resulted in a vehicle pursuit where they rammed one of our patrol vehicles. In the initial portion of the stop, they rammed the patrol vehicle and took off, and that pursuit took off, and one of the 2 vehicles ended up crashing. The other vehicle, we were able to ID him through our license plate reader technology and those things, and Truckee PD picked him up. He had a pursuit with them as well, and then proceeded to crash out and fight with law enforcement there. Both of those subjects have been arrested and are being prosecuted for DUI, the felony eluding, and all those sort of things. So they're facing down some pretty high level charges for operating a vehicle while intoxicated, and then also fleeing from the police and putting the public in danger when they're doing that.
These locals?
Local to the greater Tahoe area. Yes, the one gentleman lives over, one of the gentlemen that fled from the stop initially, like on foot. That gentleman lives right over on Southwood. The other 2 gentlemen were both from the Truckee area. So kind of the greater Lake Tahoe area in that respect. most of the people that we've contacted for DUIs in the last few months, in my experience, have been either Incline and or like Kings Beach, Truckee, somewhere in that greater Lake Tahoe area. It's people who are attending local bars, casinos, those sort of things, parties, and then driving home afterwards when they probably should utilize TART or ride sharing services like Uber or one of those type of things instead of operating.
Yeah, just quick question. I saw an article, Chris Wood, CAB.
I didn't do it.
So I saw an article the other day about one of the California newspapers about there being a scam changing license plates. So when you read the license plate with your reader, you're finding it's a stolen plate or it's a car that was it was taken from some innocent person's car and put on.
That is a common practice with stolen motor vehicles, is that someone will take the plate that was on the stolen vehicle off and replace it with another plate from another vehicle that they've stolen. A lot of times they'll steal people's front plates because they don't notice those missing quite as often. We notice that it's a front plate because it doesn't have the registration sticker on it. So that's like a dead giveaway for me as a law enforcement officer. When I get behind a vehicle and it doesn't have a registration sticker on the back plate, I'm like, something's wrong there. So it has been where someone's had their sticker stolen off their plate, but most often it's because someone's put what we call a fictitious plate, a plate that belongs to another vehicle on it.
You're saying this has increased dramatically, that people do this quite a lot. You go into a Walmart and take somebody's plate and just put it on yours, and then you go out and have your fun.
Typically, it's typically happening late at night in neighborhoods. Typically, the world of surveillance with Walmart and those sort of things, and the public prevalence, people tend to commit crimes where it's dark and not visible and those sort of things. So thusly, they do it where people aren't going to likely see them commit that crime at night, or it's not going to be noticed as quickly. So that's where, like, if people are getting notifications on their Ring camera or their Waze camera or whatever it is that you have on your house, you're getting those motion notifications. Take a look at what they are, because you might see somebody taking the plate off your car or those sort of things. So that's great information to push out to community members, that if you get those notifications, check out what they are. Don't think it was just the neighbor's cat or something, and look at what that is.
Yeah, so you haven't noticed the trend of excessive plate switching going on, at least up here?
Not up here as much. I haven't had very many fictitious plates up here. It's very common in the greater Reno area, I'll say.
Anna, I have one more question. I've been getting a number of messages telling me that my Fast Track account is overdue, and there's one other thing.
Don't go there.
Yeah, so I assumed it was stupid, but I went to my Fast Track account and it wasn't. Are you aware of that scam going around the area?
So yeah, the as far as the Fast Track one, I hadn't heard that one, but I mean, like, the reality is these scammers will find any avenue they have to try to hunt out a new way to get people to send them money. It's very aggressive as far as the level of that goes. But what we found is 90% of the time, these things are being ran from a foreign country using voice over internet protocol, a VoIP number that is essentially untraceable. There's no way to identify who has it, and it's occurring from another country. It's the reason that typically we get people who, when we ask them, they say, hey, the person had a very, very heavy accent. The person spoke in broken English, or they spoke in a way that didn't make sense. Like there was words were out of place or something like that. Typically, like if someone calls you and says, hey, you owe a medical bill, if you went to the hospital, those things. And so what I tell people is always approach things with a level of reasonable skepticism for that, knowing what your life and what you do in your life, whether your things are out of that. And if you think that you might have a balance on your account for your hospital, for your credit card, for your Fast Pass, whatever it is, always go and call them directly from the phone number, from your paperwork, from your items, and verify whether that's an issue before you just send people. And the other thing is, no business, no government entity will ever contact you and ask you to send things through gift cards, through Apple Pay cards, through any of that stuff. The government wants cold hard cash or a check or a credit card straight from you. None of these scammers want that, because that makes it traceable.
Thank you. Any other questions from the CAB, from the room, online? Okay, thank you.
Problem.
Appreciate the update.
Absolutely. Have a great night, guys.
I'm gonna go
cover my partner on call.
Good.
All right, agenda item number 6 is placemate. And we have, I have your name somewhere, Chase Janren. Janren, right, Chase.
You got it.
Placemate. Who's gonna give us a little update on it. I understand it, I guess I went to a thing in January and it was just about to start its pilot, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, no longer, you were there. Okay, go ahead.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for having me. I'm Chase Janvin. I'm the general manager of Placemate. And I will point out that the vast majority of this is background on the program and the company. And then I'll wrap up with an update of some data that we've seen since launching the program in February up here, specifically in Incline Crystal Bay. Next slide, please. Oh, I just mentioned that, so go ahead, next slide. So Placemate's vision is a world where communities are thriving because the local employees can find stable housing, right? I mean, there's plenty of issues in any of the communities that we live in, but what we don't want is for housing to be one of them. So that's what we're trying to address. And our mission is really executing on these public-private partnerships to provide housing in tourism-based economies. And we really focus in on the tourism-based economies because that's where we see two things: the prevalence of vacant homes and the cost to income ratios that are skewed, particularly for the local employees. Next slide. And we do this by converting existing housing stock to new longer-term rentals for the local workforce. And this is done by providing a one-time cash incentive to convert properties into seasonal and long-term rentals. And what I want to highlight there is it's a one-time incentive, right? It's meant to get people who have a property they're not using off the fence. And then typically what we've seen on average is between 70 to 80% of participants of housing property owners, once they receive the incentive and participate in the program, they continue to rent long-term, even though there is no additional incentive, because they recognize at that point that it's not that bad and they keep going with it. And what this does is it allows local government to quickly and efficiently address that missing middle, right? And that's key. There's lots of different housing programs for the technical low income, 80% AMI and under. Once you hit above 150, 200%-ish AMI, it's different by area. That's when we assume people can take care of themselves. In between those two AMI levels, that's where there's a huge gap in housing. It's unaffordable and there's no programs to help. The other thing with this program is because it's not the quote, capital A affordable housing, it's really customizable to exactly address the goals of the local community and jurisdiction. And so where we come in is we work with the property owners and educate them on the program, make sure that their property is qualified. And we work with the tenants, make sure that they qualify for the specific goals and guidelines that have been established for the program. This includes things like a minimum number of average hours worked, sometimes, and this includes Incline Village. There's an income cap that they have to meet. They can't exceed that income cap. And we ensure that both sides qualify for the program. Once we have the application done, it's almost like a little mini grant application. We collect all of the verifying documents, the applications, and then we submit it to the county for them to do their own double check of the work that we've completed. And that's when the property owner gets cut a check. I'll also point out that the check is not cut by us. It comes directly from the county. Oh yeah, that's fine. We can move on. And the tenant and property owner journey, almost always it starts on the property owner side, right? We think of this internally as supply side and demand side, and the demand side is always there. If it wasn't there, there wouldn't be a need for us. The supply side is the tricky part. That's where we're actively outreaching to property owners, educating them about the program. They come to us. It is a bit of a sales cycle. It's fairly unusual for property owners to say, I've got a property, I'm interested, and I'm ready to go right now. But I'll talk about some of the data, what we've seen in Washoe so far. So they may have tenants identified already, or they'll have to secure tenants. We work with both sides and facilitate and walk them through the process to ensure everybody is eligible. And then, like I said, they may have tenants already in mind, and if not, then they can list on our website for free if they choose to. They can list on Zillow, Facebook. They can identify their own tenants however they're comfortable with doing. So they're not required. The takeaway there is they're not required to list on our site, and we never select tenants on their behalf. We never tell a property owner who has to live in their property. They pick their own tenants. And so our role is we really serve as the face of the program. We're in essence an extension of the housing department. So we are the face of the program. We do the targeted marketing. We have our own dedicated webpage, phone number, a dedicated market manager that will contact all of the property owners that are interested in this market, that will work with all of the tenants who are finding properties within this market. On the tenant side of things, they can register with us and create a tenant profile. And what that does is that allows two things. One, when a new property is listed on our website, they get an alert. If it meets their rough parameters, there's a new listing on our website. And then two, it allows them to communicate directly with the property owner. We verify the local employment, get the tenant ID. And as I said, we submit basically a mini grant application for each property to the county. These are the markets we've been in addition to Incline Village, Crystal Bay. I think all told, we've been in a total of 14 markets. We're in 10 at the moment. So that's just a little bit background of our experience. You can go ahead and go to the next slide. One more. And so this is just a high level view of the results that we've seen in the other Tahoe markets where we operate. I'm not going to go into each individual market, but I will point out some of the totals that so far we've helped housed over 900 locals, and that is with a total grant allocated of just under $3 million. And you know, when we talk about some of these government programs, and those numbers can seem big, right? They sound big to some people. So that's why I've put the note on the bottom of the average cost of construction for one new affordable housing unit is approaching $1 million, depending on what market you're in. I'd be surprised if it was less than $1 million in Incline Crystal Bay area. So if you look at the total cost of those three programs together, $3 million, you could pick, ostensibly, you could build 3 new affordable housing units, or you could house 900 people for the same cost. Right? It's a little way to, I know it's apples and oranges, but it's a little way to compare the ROI of this program versus new construction. And that's not to say that new construction is not part of the overall puzzle. It absolutely is. But that's a multi-year, multi-million dollar project typically for new construction. One more. All right, so for the IVCB program, we always start as a pilot program whenever we launch. Every market is going to have some nuance, and we want to make sure that we're learning the nuance of that market in year one. So we're officially in the pilot program. Funding was provided, thankfully, by Washoe County. I'll give a big thanks to Commissioner Hill for pushing this housing program forward and the hard work done by the Washoe County staff to get us where we are today. The Tahoe Prosperity Center was involved and contracted to collect community feedback. There were 3 community feedback sessions that helped guided the guidelines. We collected feedback and talked through what we've seen in other markets, how that impacts the program, and that's how we arrived at the guidelines that we have today. The program was launched, I will point out that the program was launched in February, even though funding was allocated months ago, because by the time we were done with the Tahoe Prosperity Center public feedback component, we would have been launched in November. And we've seen in every market that as soon as Thanksgiving hits, everything slows down. we didn't want to launch a program with the November, December, January slow season. That's true in every market for years that we've seen. So we delayed launch until February 1st, and that was strategic. Lastly, I'll point out that I'll go back one more. I want to make sure I touch on this, but there is an 8-month onboarding period. So what that means is that as of today, for the next 8 months, or starting February 1st, for 8 months, that's when new properties can enter the program. Okay. And then the compliance period, the best way to explain that is if there is a lease signed, a new property enters the program on the last month, let's say September, we have compliance that we do with the property owners and tenants through the remainder of that lease. So that's why there's that rolling 12-month tail of compliance from the last lease sign. So touch on the high points of the local program policies. Obviously, the property must be located, must be local. So Incline Village, Crystal Bay planning boundary, property must be within that. And the property cannot have been a full-time rental within the past 12 months. Again, the point of this program is to create new long-term housing rental inventory, right? So new rentals only. Leases can be long-term, as we define them as 12 plus months. That's the typical long-term 1-year lease, or a seasonal option is allowed. So that's a lease anywhere from 5 to 11 months. There's a rent cap of a maximum of $4,000, and the incentive amounts are $4,500 for long-term leases per qualified tenant, or $2,000 for seasonal leases per qualified tenant. And regardless of what lease type it is, there's a maximum of 4 qualified tenants. So when you add that up, if you were to have 4 qualified tenants in a long-term lease, that's $18,000. For a seasonal lease, it would be $8,000, right? I'll also point out that this is, the incentive amounts are consistent with both the Truckee and the East Placer County programs. I think there was a lot of value in having that regional consistency on the North Shore. South Lake Tahoe had much lower incentive amounts, and then at their last city council meeting, they just increased them up to these numbers as well. So now all 4 markets in the Tahoe region all have the same incentive amounts. As far as qualifying, I think it's helpful to think about it in 2 ways. There's the household, and then there's the individuals who we call qualified tenants. So in order for the household to be eligible at all, there must be at least 1 qualified tenant. And so that means that there must be 1 local employee, right? That qualified tenant is the local employee. And then the property owner would receive a grant for any qualified tenants. If there's only 1, they would receive 1 grant. If there's 4, they'll receive 4 grants, etc. The income cap for Washoe was 200% AMI, and that equates to $141,000 and change. And I'll point out, this was a bit of a source of contention when we were designing the guidelines with TPC feedback, and there was concern about having an income cap that high. But I'll point out that the average qualified tenant, the average adult income in Truckee, which has a lower income cap than that, is about $70,000. The average adult income in Placer County, which has no income cap at all, is $75,000. So we really don't feel that there's much risk of people, of higher income folks taking advantage of this program. We just haven't seen that in other markets. And we've been in East Placer County for 3 years now. Next slide, please. All right, so 1 slide summarizing the data for you guys. I'm sure that this is what's of most interest to you, but these are great results. I'm really happy to report this. This is as of today, as of this morning. We've had 31 property owner leads, 9 of which we're still trying to reach. We have a handful of stages that we categorize property owners in. And until we get them on the phone and talk to them and learn about their property and educate them on the program, it's still a new lead. So 31 total leads, 9 of them are new that we're still trying to reach. 8 are not qualified or not interested. And I've put a little note there that only 1 was not interested. It's really early stage, of course. It's been less than 2 months in operating, but every market has a large percentage of interested property owners that eventually say they're not interested. This is exceptionally low, just having 1 out of 31. Really good sign and really speaks to the demand that there is here for local property owners that care about the local workforce and would like to participate in helping. 16 have indicated that they're in some degree of interested or future interest. We've talked to them on the phone, we've qualified their property, and they've said, yes, I would like to do this, but I can't right now for X, Y, or Z reason. They may have Airbnb bookings that they have to see through. There could be deferred maintenance. They might have to talk to their sibling or spouse who co-owns the property, things like that. And 7 listed properties, so this is huge. We have 7 properties that are actively looking for tenants right now. The program's been running for, I'll reiterate, less than 2 months, and we already have 7 properties looking for homes. To put that in context, we have budget to do between 20 and 30 properties total. And we're 2 months in and we've already got 7 that are looking for tenants. That's outstanding progress for this stage of the program. And that's all I've had. I'm happy to answer any questions or clarify any points if you have them.
All right, so we'll start with the CAB. Chris Wood.
Yeah, thank you, Chase. Have you any idea how many of these 7 are Airbnbs or any of the ones that were listed as interested? 16.
We do track that data. I don't have that off the top of my head, but I can certainly follow up with that.
But do you think it's more than one? Or it's happening. I mean, there's Airbnb people are kind of shifting maybe to a long-term thing.
Yes, I know for a fact that we've got at least one, but we track that on the intake form when property owners reach out to us. So we have the prior use of that property. I know that there's one off the top of my head, but yeah, I don't want to misstate how many more.
How about other jurisdictions? Have you seen this before?
Yes, and it's different by market, of course. That speaks to what I was mentioning earlier about the nuance between markets. And for example, South Lake Tahoe, up until a couple of weeks ago, had Measure T, and Airbnbs really weren't allowed. So on the front end of the program, we certainly had people that were Airbnbing, then they were no longer allowed, so they came into the program. But after that first year, we haven't seen any because they basically weren't allowed to exist. Placer County, we see that pretty frequently. And we've been hearing more and more from property owners that tell us that they're just burned out on it. They're tired of dealing with Airbnb in general, the turnover, upsetting their neighbors, things like that. And so they leave that cleaning fees, property management, house cleaners getting sick, not showing up, the gamut of it. But again, it's easier to speak to it in Placer because we've been there for 3 years.
I have another question, if I may continue. What is the percentage of renewals of these leases after 1 year? I mean, you give this cash incentive that can be as much as $18,000. What is the rate of renewal? Is it kind of like the owner says, okay, that's it, I'll take my 18, I'll run, I'm not going to rent anymore? What do you see?
Yeah, I mentioned that earlier, that on average across all of our markets, it's between 70 and 80%. I will say the highest we've ever seen, because I just reported this data, South Lake Tahoe last year was 93%. It was all but one renewed. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's one of our favorite bullet points. I mean, it really does speak to the long-term impact of this program, obviously.
Why do you think switch turns over in their head and they go, hey, this isn't bad?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the nature of this program inherently is meant for people who have never been landlords before, right? And there's a lot of nervousness around that. Opening up their home that they've owned for years, sometimes decades. They've seen news reports about how hard it can be to deal with an eviction, and they're hesitant, if not, terrified to rent it. Then they go through the first year and they're like, yeah, this is not bad. This is actually working well.
Other CAB? All right, I have one.
Yes.
If Roxana, if this is somebody's second home and they do like to come up here for 2 weeks or 4 weeks every summer, is that factored into this? How do you work around that?
Yeah, I mean, that would not be allowed to write into the lease, right? Because then you're displacing the tenants. But what I would say is that the incentive that you're earning can pay for a hotel, an Airbnb, you can use those funds somewhere else. But if you're going to participate in this program, then you have to adhere to the terms of the lease. I'll follow up with that we do have the seasonal option, right? We talk to a lot of property owners that are either skiers or boaters. And so whichever one they are, then they'll rent their property for the seasonal, on a seasonal lease for when they're not using it.
All right, Denise Davis?
So you mentioned that the checks to the owners don't come from PlaceMate, they come from the county.
Yes.
So is there a county department that's in charge of this then?
Yes. So we work with county staff at the grants department. Gabriel Enfield is our point of contact. And so what we do is when we put together this mini grant application, we submit it to her and her team. They review all of the work that we've done, and then they facilitate cutting the check. So the incentive funds never come through PlaceMate. We just facilitate the application.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
All right, any other CAB? All right, in the room, Aaron. And Aaron, you need to come up here so we can hear you.
Aaron Vanderpool, I just wanted to ask, so the county pays the homeowners, who pays PlaceMate and like your salary?
Sure. So we are under contract with the county, so the county pays us. The program was funded with the last remaining ARPA funds, which was federal funds that came in response to COVID. We were one of, in that last bucket of funds, I believe that we were one of 19 recipients to receive some of that funding.
All right, do we have any questions online? Looks like Rhonda Tyser has her hand up, or Alex Digdinos. I'm gonna be able to pronounce Digdinos in a year or two. Alex.
Yeah, thank you. Two questions and a comment. First, once those ARPA funds are depleted, who will then cover the incentives? I assume that's Washoe County. And so, yeah, I'm just curious where the budget comes from to fund the 20 to 30 properties that will be incentivized. And then my other comment is for Washoe County. I mean, prior to STRs being reclassified as a residential use, our zoning didn't permit or our zoning in the residential area required people living here for at least 29 days, either as owners or renters, and that program was free. And that's it.
So I can speak to the budget side of things. Is that's why it's a pilot program. We do only have funding for 1 year at this moment. That is pretty consistent with almost every other market that we operate in. There's a pool of funds for a 1 year contract. As we get towards the end of that contract, if the partner jurisdiction decides that the program has been successful enough and warrants extension and refunding, then the onus is on them to identify funding. Sometimes it comes from general funds. I think the most appropriate, and this is, this varies state by state of what you're allowed to do. I'm not sure, it's my understanding it may not be allowed in Nevada, but in California and most other states, they essentially use TOT funds, the transient occupancy tax. So that little line item on any hotel or Airbnb bill goes to a pot of funds, and then a portion, a little fraction of that funds this program. But if Washoe was to extend for another year, then they would have to identify additional funding.
All right, do we have another one?
Wanda did have her hand up. I'm not seeing it.
Okay, Rhonda?
I just wanted to let Denise know that we couldn't hear her when she was talking. So it would be good for her to get closer to the mic so we can understand her. Thanks.
Okay. All right, you have another one? All right, Chris Wood has one follow-up question.
Chris Wood. So What's gonna happen with these 70 property owners? Can you take us through what happens now? You got these seven property owners here in Incline, Crystal Bay, Village, Crystal Bay.
Less than 20 years.
What happens next? Yeah, take us through that.
Sure. Yeah, so on one of the slides, it talked, had some arrows bouncing back and forth and addressed that visually a little bit, but in essence, the next step is the property owner has to identify tenants. It's up to them how they do that. They can list on our website for free if they like and communicate with potential tenants directly, or, Facebook Marketplace, Zillow, or even just their own personal network. Once they identify tenants, we provide them all of the guidelines that they can do themselves to get a sense of if the tenants qualify. We're always here to help give them a second look and say, yes, in fact, these folks do qualify. One thing that I'll point out that I failed to mention earlier is the program is not meant to be retroactive. However, there's 60 days to submit an application after the start of the lease, right? The reason for that is we don't want everybody to wait before somebody can sign a lease and then apply for the grant, right? You don't have to have everything 100% completely done before you sign a lease. However, we do recommend that you get on the phone with us, you talk to us, you get a very high sense of confidence that your tenants are going to qualify before you sign a long-term lease.
So do you have tenants on your website now that are ready to go?
Yes.
And so one of these 7 property owners can look on that website, they can look at these tenants and say, okay, there's one there, or they could do something else.
Yeah, it's only one direction. It's not a dating website, so they don't get to pick both directions. The tenants have to reach out first.
Okay.
So we do not have profiles of tenants listed on our website. When tenants create a renter profile with us, that's what enables them to reach out directly to landlords who have the property that they're interested in. And then they can go back and forth.
And so the landlord just gets a call or some kind of contact from a
Yeah,
prospective
yeah.
tenant.
Yeah, it goes through our application, but yeah.
Roxana, I have one more, and that is, do you by any chance look through the next door ads not ads, but postings that come up where people are saying, I'm desperately trying to find a place? Have you done any outreach that way?
I personally don't. I would have to check and see if we make a habit of looking at Nextdoor. We do social media on Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn, but I don't know that we do Nextdoor.
There was one today.
Yeah, I see
Yeah.
one at least once a month, I think,
Oh, it's
so,
more often than that.
yeah,
Chris Woodsy.
all right, thank you. All right, Denise Davis, will they just keep
Denise Davis.
trickling in?
Yep.
Okay.
So 8 months is our time span for this program to launch. And so if we started February 1st, that means the end of September is the end of our time to get into this program, correct?
That's the end of the time to onboard new properties.
Okay.
That's right.
Okay.
And I'll again point out that considering that we already have 7 listings, once a property enters the stage of listing, there's a 90% chance that they're going to enter the program. So the fact that we already have 7 makes me believe, knock on wood, that there is a chance we could be oversubscribed before we get to the end of September. Not guaranteed, but.
Chris Wood again, you said there is a cap on subscription, was it 20?
Well, because the incentives are paid by the number of qualified tenants, we can't exactly tell how many properties that'll be. It'll depend on, how many 1 bedrooms versus 4 bedrooms, that kind of thing. But it should land somewhere between 20 to 30 properties is what we're forecasting.
Okay, I think we have exhausted all of the questions, and thank you so much for.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
I hope we can get you some leads. I had a good lead, but it got unfunded, so there you go. All right. Agenda item number 7 then is, I'm sorry,
Is there public comment on that item?
did I not ask for public comment? I thought I did back when, and then the cab started coming in again. Do you want something?
Yes.
All right, Aaron Vanderpool. How many-
Okay, Aaron Vanderpool. For those of you that know me, I like to think in systems. And I'm gonna tell a really different story here about this program. And I made time to come here because I think this is important. It affects my future, it affects your future, it affects our children's future. And a lot of people aren't understanding or talking about this. I'm frankly appalled by programs like this and disgusted because it harms my future. And the reason is because what this is doing is, if you notice during COVID, our housing prices went up and up and up, and asset prices in the stock market just keeps going up, and we're seeing more homeless. The bottom part of society is not doing well. This is happening all over the world. And one economist, which I passed out, and I'm happy to hand you one, I suggest really looking into this because he can explain it better. And he's a professional, he's been through a lot of this stuff. But the stimulus money that the governments make, like the money that pays for this program, comes from the government, comes from me, the taxpayer. The governments borrow money. They give these money to the, basically, well, in this case, they're giving it to the homeowners. That money, and during COVID, they gave it to regular people. That money eventually is like you could kind of compare it to a laundering scheme. It funnels up to the wealthy. And all this does is it's destroying the bottom of society. And we're leading a world into a world where the wealthy get more wealthy, more powerful. They're buying elections. They're controlling everything. And, and then also these programs, depending on who's in there this year, if this program's only 1 year, and then these people are renting for 1 year and the program ends, what are these people going to do after that if the government changes? We're not, and I think this really, the one important point is this goes beyond the political spectrum. It's not left, right. It's happening all across it and these programs. And the only way, unfortunately, this is not an easy thing to fix because it has to be a grassroots movement that understands this, and the poor have to suffer before people recognize that instead of giving money to the wealthy through this borrowing, the governments get in debt, the people get in debt, and the rich it all comes to the wealthy. And instead of that, we need to be doing the opposite. We need to be taxing the rich, limiting their ability to own all the assets in the world, which they're using to make money through these programs. And that's my 3 minutes, I think. Thank you.
Sorry.
8 seconds to spare.
Okay, thank you, Aaron. Chase, I'm gonna guess you've heard this one before. Would you like to respond?
Sure. It's, before I took this role, I worked for the Tahoe Prosperity Center working on housing policy. And so I do hear that concern. I will point out that, I alluded to it earlier on one of the slides of the cost of impact of this program versus new construction. And it's, there's 54 tools in the housing toolbox. None of them can be implemented as quickly or cost effectively as this one. I mean, there's just nothing else out there that even compares. Any other housing program costs much more money and takes much longer to implement. The other thing that I will point out is we don't consider this program to be an affordable housing program, right? We consider this to be an available housing program. And that incentive does increase the available inventory of rental housing stock. And that's the goal of the program, and we do feel that it achieves that goal.
Right.
I would just ask you a question. It's true though that there's only one,
Chris, what's your name?
Chris Wood, from the CAB. There's only one cash incentive payment to these homeowners. The renewal that's happening at 70 to 80%. is not at all dependent on continuous gifts to those owners. So
That's correct. Yeah,
just want to make sure that was clear. Thank you.
yes.
Okay. All right. Okay, again, thank you, Chase, for coming and helping us with that one, and best wishes to fill out all of them.
Thank you.
All right, we'll now go to agenda item number 7, which is in-town trail usage. Denise Davis from the CAB is going to lead this discussion. So Denise, I'll let you introduce it.
Thanks, Roxana. This is Denise Davis, member of the CAB. And as previously mentioned, thanks to John Davidson for suggesting this as a discussion topic. And my goal for this discussion is to share ideas to improve safety for everyone while allowing a variety of uses and focusing on things that the county has some jurisdiction or some ability to help with. So, and I'm just going to start. The thing that has always confused me about our bike paths, walking trails, everything else, one of the things is I just find our signage very confusing. And now I do know that State Route 28 is NDOT controlled, but my hope is that Washoe County can help us with some discussions with NDOT. Because like everything else in our town, we never just are dealing with one set of people. We seem to have a variety of folks involved in our projects. So this first picture I wanted to share was, I find our signage is very problematic. So as you can see in this picture, the sign is sitting between a road and a paved path. And so, okay, so which is the bike lane? Well, the bike lane is on the road because you can't see it in this picture, but painted on the road is the little bike lane symbol. So I'm just suggesting that, you know, maybe if we just add some information to some of these signs, like if we put an arrow on the bike lane sign pointing to the road, that would clear it up for me as to where the bike lane is. Also painting more symbols on the road surface itself, and also possibly painting the word no bikes on the path. That would clear some things up for me, and I have to believe maybe a few other folks. So next slide, Alexandra. And moving on east on State Route 28, Tahoe Boulevard. Again, we have a big no bike sign. I'm like, okay, well, right beside it, there's a bike path on the road, but then there's the paved path. So I'm again a little confused because the sign is a little closer to the path. But you know, the thing is, our visitors to the area, they see these signs everywhere, especially the big red no bike signs. And so I'm just asking again, to me, it seems like it'd be really easy to help clarify if, again, we just added an arrow to the sign or put some words with the sign, you know, like no bikes on the path. And again, possibly painting the word no bikes actually on the pavement would help clarify. And I'm just going to suggest that if the county's not able to do that, maybe one of our service organizations, or maybe an Eagle Scout who's looking for a project. These are some things that the county doesn't necessarily have to do, but if they could help in the discussions, I think that would move things along. So then on our next slide, another thing that's concerning about our bike situation especially is the width of our bike lanes varies from almost wide enough to park a car in to just a few inches. And I can verify that just driving the length of 28 through our town, from the roundabout on the west through the Tunnel Creek parking on the east side of town. You can go from a full width bike lane to inches within a block or less. And especially when we only have inches, there's very little room for us to put that great little symbol there showing that this is the bike lane. And those tiny little bike lanes exist for multiple blocks. And so that's adding to some of the confusion, is making people realize, oh, this tiny little 4 inches over here on the side, that's a bike lane. Another problem with these super small bike lanes is we have a lot of ingress and egress points, especially on Tahoe Boulevard, not limited to Tahoe Boulevard, but especially. And in addition to that, we have, with the opening I've noticed of natural grocers, we've had a lot more traffic backups, especially in that block of town happening. And it's hard to navigate the traffic backup. And then you have bikes coming up along the side on these tiny little paths. So that's just some safety concerns I would just like to bring up to the county. Along with, if we're trying to get people out of cars, which is a goal of the county and the TRPA and other entities, we have to have a safe place for people to use bikes and scooters and skateboards and to walk. And so when we just have these, tiny, tiny little bike paths or no paths in some of our areas, it's hard to push the agenda to get folks out of their car when we don't really have a safe alternative for them. So I just want to add that into some of the planning mix. So next slide, please. And another path that I think the signage could be improved is on Lakeshore. Our path is marked as a bike route. And I could take this picture any day of the year, some pedestrian walking in the travel lanes. I could also take a picture any day of the year of bicycles in the travel lane. And I understand from hearing from bicyclists, they don't like being on the path because people tend to, if they're in a group of people, they tend to walk side by side, which blocks off the entire path. And so I understand why bicyclists are not fond of trying to navigate that. I also understand some pedestrians are like, well, it says bike route, so I can't walk on this. Where am I supposed to walk? I'm in the street. So again, cycling back to my previous point about we have to provide safe places for folks. Next slide, please. And there's our pedestrian again. Next slide. Next slide. So like I said, I could take this picture almost any day of the year with pedestrians or bicyclists. Bicyclists just tend to move faster, so I don't catch them as often. And again, some more confusing signage. Oops, we're one too far. Thanks. Another intersection I encounter a lot is at Lakeshore and Selby. So we have a pedestrian sign, but when you actually get to the intersection, next slide, it says bike path. And next slide. So it's indicating that this path that crosses the lakeshore is a bike lane. Next slide, please. And also, so you're confused because pedestrians are like, oh, well, it says bike path, so I need to walk somewhere else. Bicyclists, again, see people walking on the path and don't want to navigate that. And on top of that, especially in the winter, when our paths aren't cleared, everybody moves to the street because who wants to fall down and hurt themselves on the icy path? So Next slide, please. And it's not just a winter problem, especially as our weather gets nicer and as more and more visitors come to our area, we quickly have a larger population on Lake Shore. If you just think about the fact that the Hyatt has over 400 rooms and, you know, multiply that by 2 people per room, and a lot of them are walking on Lake Shore, either to walk to the beaches or walk down to the East Shore Trail. And I know we have other places in town that have the same type of problems. This is just a stretch I'm familiar with. So I believe that is my last slide. I also wanted to share with the county, I know that Mr. Solero has mentioned several times that the priority for the county is to get the paths to schools cleared. And I appreciate that. But I have photos of the paths during this winter that they weren't getting, the paths on school routes were also not getting cleared. So I don't know if that's, I do know that he had mentioned that they had some subcontractors this year. So I don't know if we need to follow up with subcontractors or, but anyway, just wanted to let the county know that our paths clearing was not as good as it perhaps could have been. And that is most of just the examples I wanted to bring up to start off the discussion. I asked our sheriff's office to be here, but as you heard, our deputy got called away on a call. So I don't have any input from our sheriff's office. But I did also extend to, I believe, 4 rental agencies in the area, let them know that we were going to be discussing bikes and pedestrians and other modes of transportation. And so I think they joined us. Can we, do you have the participants list there? Yes. So I believe that Max, if there's anything you want to contribute to the discussion, feel free to go ahead.
Hi, Max here. Max Jones, and I operate the rental shop behind Tunnel Creek Cafe, Flume Trail Bikes. And I agree, in town it is very confusing as far as where to go, where to be. You're right, good cyclists that are just passing through town, they want to stay on the streets. Bike paths are kind of dangerous. And the only other thing that hasn't been brought up is the e-bike thing. And there's so many categories. It's like one thing I'd like to see on a lot of the paths, especially like, you know, or at least speed limit signs for e-bikes, and technically just the category 1 bikes that you have to pedal while you're using them are pretty much like the only things that are allowed on proper bike paths. Anything more than that, especially like the, you know, basically e-motorcycles that are out there, should be on the streets and should be licensed as such, as far as I'm concerned. That's kind of that's all I can think of right now.
So Max, can I ask you, do you have some things that you hear on a somewhat regular basis from people who are renting your bikes?
Not really. I mean, most of the people that rent the bikes are heading down the East Shore path, you know, that obviously aren't mountain bikes and heading for the backcountry. You know, that path that's a whole separate issue, and there definitely needs to be like speed limit signs on that, and there should be some signage teaching people what, like a, you know, a category 1 pedal assist bike. We tune the speeds down on ours to keep the speeds closer to like 10 or 12 miles an hour, because you can detune them just for a safety thing. You know, and that's pedal. They of course will coast faster than that, but you know, with any pedal assist, we have them cut out, you know, at a much slower speed than they're made. But the education's hard because, boy, you just see everything out there. You know, and signage would be a start for it, I guess.
Okay, thanks. And I see some other names I'm not familiar with. So is anyone else in the participants list a bike rental shop? You can put your hand up. Don't see any hands. Okay. Oh, all right. I guess we'll open it up to the CAB members.
Okay, Roxana, I have several things to say on this, as always. I see our problems with e-bikes in particular as a three-pronged problem. One is our infrastructure, which you had wonderful documentation to show just how pathetic our bike lanes are when they exist and how confusing the signage is. When I was biking in the Bay Area, the paths that were used by pedestrians and bikes did have posted speed limits of 15 miles an hour with a little sign underneath, cut your speed in half if pedestrians present. So 7.5 miles an hour. But anyway, they had speed limit signs like that. And I think with the variety of vehicles that are being invented on a weekly basis, you really have to go more for the behavior than for the particular form of transportation. So I would throw that in. I said it was a three-pronged problem. Another problem is the tourists. E-bikes, 10 or 15 years ago, the only people who were biking around here were avid cyclists who could handle these hills without assist. And so these were people who are good on bicycles and probably behaved because they had learned to do that. With e-bikes, you now throw people who have not rented a bike or have not been on a bike in 25 years into the mix. And so I think particularly for our rental agencies, this need to educate a little bit is something that we would really appreciate your help. And then the final prong is locals. And in particular, I've been focused on the kids. And you've heard me say several times that I'm concerned because I see young kids who have never ridden bicycles much because you just can't ride bicycles around here that easily. Suddenly put on an e-bike. Mom and dad didn't know the difference between a class 1 and a class 3. So they are basically on a junior motorcycle going down Village Boulevard at 50 miles an hour. You've heard me talk about trying to get some education for this, and I have made a little bit of progress. So the middle school is holding a mountain biking clinic, and it's really more focused on kids who are riding mountain bikes on the trails, not in the city. But I talked to the sponsor about this, and he is going to check with the instructor and see if we can't add at least some education on-street riding targeted for our middle schoolers. I would like to actually open it up. We'll have to see if this will happen, but open it up to include not just the kids who are mountain biking up in the back country, but all of the kids, and for that matter, their parents as well. So I'm hoping we'll get something going this spring to get a little bit of education to our kids and to their parents. I know my daughter-in-law bought a secondhand bike, so she wasn't talking to a dealer who might have explained things to her better. Bought a class 2 for my grandson. So the parents don't always know. And when I asked the sheriff for some training, she deferred to the parents, and I'm going, no, that's not going to work. So anyway, that's a little bit of progress. I'm looking forward to, I think we're getting the Lakeshore Boulevard, a real bike lane put in this summer. Isn't that, I believe that's on the plan. I'll double check. And if that's the case, then let's make sure they understand to make the signage clear. I like your suggestions for that. All right, that's it from me.
So Alexander, from that discussion, can I have you keep your ears open for any kind of bike training that you guys might hear about on outside of the basin that, you know, we could at least start with them and see if we can, you know, add things for some of our terrain that they might not have to deal with, but.
Also, May is a National Bike Month, so there'll probably be a lot of things happening. I know that they're doing Ride Reno, Spin Sparks.
I would like to see, and maybe Max, some of the retailers around here could help with this. Some sort of clinics where you teach the rules of the road. The middle schoolers, I want them to know the rules of the road because they haven't even had driver's ed yet. But have a clinic for adults in this area to learn some defensive driving skills as well. So there are good materials out there that we can borrow from. Oregon has a fabulous pamphlet that explains defensive bicycle riding, and I'd like to pull some of that training here. Okay.
Keep your ears open. All right, Chris Wood.
Yes, Chris Wood. If I may address a question to Max. Max, do you have a kind of a talk that you give e-bike users that are going on at least the East Side Trail and maybe even in town using the paths in town about defensive driving? As Roxana just mentioned that Oregon apparently likes to promote. Is there any kind of standard kind of talk that you might give or any of the other bike rental folks give?
We do go over the bikes and how to use them and you know, how to be basically nice on the trail. We train everybody at the shop. You know, sometimes people fall through the cracks, you know, but you try to get everybody kind of on board and how to basically coexist on a trail that can get quite crowded. And then that's a good idea to go more of like the defensive riding tricks and how to, you know, slow down when you go by people, all those little things. So I'm going to be adding some of that to our normal talks.
So can I expand upon that? This is Denise Davis. Alexandra, is there any ability for the county to help us do just a very brief bike, scooter, skateboard safety video that we could post online? I mean, like 5 minutes, you know, right on this side of the road, don't go faster than this speed, that kind of a thing. Is there? Okay, I'm just asking.
Contractor for our videos, but it usually comes at a cost. Even a 5 to 10 minute video can cost upwards of $5,000 depending on what's all included in it. But I can write it down in my notes to get back to you to see what options we'd be able to help with or what things we could help with.
Because I'm just thinking, like Max said, you know, sometimes, especially when you're training people and then they're explaining the things, sometimes some things might get missed. So I'm just thinking that maybe if there's just a 5-minute safety video available somewhere, then everybody would be getting the same messages. So just a thought. Sorry, Chris, go ahead.
Yeah, so I don't know how far you're going to go in the future into this in-town trail usage issues and suggestions. But have you looked at any engineering standards for mixed use bike paths that like the Association of Engineers or all these kind of standard setting agencies they may have for an appropriate width?
They do have those things. I do know that. I guess that was kind of where I was hoping the county could help us with talking with NDOT, especially about 28, because they're in charge of 28. And I'm sure that I'm going to guess that perhaps their standards might be different than county standards. I don't even know if there is a county standard for bike width or bike lane widths, that kind of thing.
It's not bike lane, it's mixed use.
Mixed use.
Pedestrian bikes, such as what we have along Lake Shore. is that the standard width that it should be to have this kind of traffic going back and forth? Whether it's these class one bikes at max rents or hopefully not the others, but you know, is there a standard width? Does Lakeshore measure up to it? I'm not talking about the bike lane that they're talking about putting on Lakeshore. I'm talking about the ones that I walk on when I walk down Lakeshore. Am I on something that is wide enough to allow bikes to come along and not put me at risk? That's the question, which I don't know that the county adheres to, or that standard adheres to or not. But it doesn't look like it. I mean, the Lakeshore path widens and narrows just like you were showing us with your slides, so.
So Alexandra, I'm not sure if that would be with county roads or that would be with the planning department. I'm not sure who would have those.
They're housed in the same grouping, so.
Okay.
We'll reach out to them.
Okay, great.
I'm gonna send for this portion over to our planning division and probably assistant county manager.
Okay.
So then they can get any questions that need to be answered and I'll send back and update it at the next CAB.
Okay. Carla, did you have any comments, questions?
No, no questions, Carla Warner. I just, I know that NDOT has been at any, like, they were at the East Shore Trail opening, so, and I know they're big on safety and they give out a lot of safety swag and things like that, so I would guess that, they're probably part of that group and probably have a lot of, may have a safety video already. I'm sure they've already addressed I'm sure they're dealing with the e-bikes and the motorized bikes and stuff already, so.
Roxana, I went through the NDOT website and went through a thing called documents and went through 2 or 3 pages of lists of documents, looking for something like what I found in Oregon, and I did not find it. I also have a call into NDOT. We've been missing back and forth because they do have a department called Bike and Pedestrian Safety. So they have, but you go to the Bike and Pedestrian Safety page and it says Bike and Pedestrian Safety. So I assume they, you know, I don't know what's going on there, but they don't have much out there yet. But I do have a call into them, and if there's somebody else that wants to pick that up as well. I'm still focused mostly on the middle school kids, but you know, if somebody else wants to pick up trying to do more of a safety clinic for riders in general, that would be a great idea.
I personally have a feeling that if we understood the different requirements, NDOT's requirements, county requirements, for me, if I understand the requirements and what the restrictions and requirements are, then sometimes I am better able to work out a solution. Whereas right now, it just seems like everybody's just unhappy trying to use the same amount of pavement. So my hope is maybe we can start some discussions about, okay, well, these are our requirements. How can we meet those in this limited amount of space that we have to make it work? So
I'd like to open up for comments now in the room. Aaron, you're it. So everybody else was just too put off by the terrible weather outside to come here tonight. Okay, Aaron.
Aaron Vanderpool, and if I could just add on the last seconds of my last comment for those, the board member knew, but my reference was Gary's Economics for my last comment. And for this comment, yeah, I've been bicycling to school here since like 1994 to like the middle school, the high school, the university downtown here. And I grew up in a small town, and I don't, honestly, for me personally, I don't have any complaints. I will be the last person to ever complain about stuff. I'm used to walking 10 miles through 100 feet of snow. But the one thing I will complain about is e-bikes on the trails. That's one thing I don't like. And I've been coming to this meeting or the cabs for years, way back when Pete Todoroff was on the board a long time ago. And he invited the county up to discuss problems in my neighborhood. And so I'm kind of, my comments just to fight for my neighborhood. Any conversations going on with the county, I just want to fight for my neighborhood down there, Oriole Way. I've been complaining about it for 2 decades now, and the county just ignored me, and I could talk all night about issues going on down there. But as far as specifically what this is about, trails, I'll just say that cars are continuously parking on the sidewalk there. And goes deep into the details of this. I don't have enough time to go into it, but I'd like to invite anybody to my neighborhood. I'd be welcome to talk to them about the situation there. And I've had discussions with the police and disagreements about whether or not they should enforce certain laws that they aren't down there. And so the comment here, I don't remember what that meant, but yeah, I wanted to thank the CAB for allowing our community to have a voice as a county. I really appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. All right, we'll now go online, and gosh, oh, there they go. Okay. Before we start, Rhonda Tyser submitted an email with her comments about e-bikes. Rhonda, if you would like to represent that, do put your hand up. If you don't put it up, okay, there you go. Oh, there it went, and there it went. Okay, so we'll let Rhonda represent that. But we'll start in the order. So we'll go with Pam Sigdinos.
Am I unmuted?
Yes, you're good.
Thank you. So great presentation, Denise. And I really want to underscore the points you made as well as the comments from Roxana. I'd like to understand if it's possible to get this presentation in front of the Washoe County Commissioners and the RSCVA, the Reno Sparks Convention and Visitors Association, and the TRPA. And those 3 jurisdictions are all critical because there is a remarkable amount of promotion that goes out to visitors all over the place from the RSCVA in Washoe County about Washoe Tahoe and how walkable and bikeable it is. And the TRPA is making amendments to the Tahoe area plan with the premise being that there are existing bike paths, walking paths, and that they've got all of the infrastructure figured out. Your presentation demonstrates that the infrastructure is not only not figured out, it is woefully inadequate, and there are significant public safety risks inherent in a walkable, bikeable concept that must be addressed before any further discussions are made with amendments and how they're going to add more people and more structures into Incline Village, Crystal Bay. So I'd like to really make a strong suggestion that our Commissioner Alexis Hill champions this at the commissioners meeting, as well as at the RSCVA, where she sits on the board, and the TRPA, where she represents Washoe County. It is critical that they understand we are about the furthest thing from a walkable, bikeable community today, based on the images that Denise's presentation shares. I have a lot more images, I'm pretty sure Erin does as well, that will show when you have baby strollers and people pulling wagons, heading to beaches on Highway 28. It is a disaster in the making, and this is a really critical topic that needs more airtime at the jurisdictions where they are setting the policies. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pam. Good points. I'll go to Rhonda.
Mute.
Okay, you're on.
I don't know, I unmuted it. Okay, am I on?
Yes.
Okay, great. Just a couple of comments. First of all, I was confused, and I think many people are, about whether the Nevada state law allows for local jurisdictions to make their own rules regarding e-bikes. And the answer is yes, they do. Their online statement is that e-bikes may be ridden in places where traditional bikes are allowed, including streets, highways, bike lanes, bicycle paths, and shared use paths. Local governments may restrict e-bike use on specific paths or trails. So it's always best to check with local rules and regulations before riding in a new area. So this suggests to me that not only can Washoe County make rules for us, but local government includes IVCB. So perhaps IVCB should take a role also in trying to create the coordinated rules for e-bikes throughout the community. What I sent in was basically a recognition that e-bikes are not bicycles. They have a motor. They are motorized vehicles, and they are a class of motorcycle. So whether a motor is electric or run with gasoline is immaterial, but because e-bikes have a motor, they must be subject to the same laws as all other motorized bikes. And this means to me, they should not be on the streets and trails specifically for pedestrians. They should, or cars, they should be on streets and trails for motorbikes or motorcycles. They should never be on sidewalks. And I think that it's up to either IVCB or Washoe County to put up signage immediately that is very clear that e-bikes are not allowed on bike paths used by pedestrians. Just make it that simple. And that those signs should be definitely along the Village Boulevard Bike Trail and the Lakeshore Bike Trails. Just say that motorbikes and e-bikes are not allowed on those trails. And I think that will clarify a lot of things for a lot of people and take away the danger that our community is seeing with these e-bikes. So I think either IVCB or Washoe County needs to immediately start making signs, putting them up before summer, before we have, the plethora of e-bikers, and get them up so it's very clear where these e-bikes can go inside our town. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Rhonda. All right, next we have John Davidson. Thank you. Oh, good idea. You tell me and then you can be ahead. I'm showing him as muted. Is that from your end?
Should be on mute. Let's just make sure. John, are you able to?
Mute, okay.
There we go. Okay.
Hello. Yes, I do have some comments to make. One thing that I would like to call attention to is that I have seen signs painted on some of our trails that say, "Trails are for everyone, slow down." I don't know who's doing that painting, but I think that's a beginning. At least it tells people that they might be courteous. The next thing I'd like to say is that I think that we need to think about this in terms of county-wide basic limits. And countywide, setting a mandatory speed limit of 15 miles an hour for everyone on all pathways countywide would be a reasonable rule to consider. Number two, setting a mandatory limit of a passing speed. My suggestion is 5 miles an hour when passing others on the path. And the third thing is enforce a requirement that all persons using a wheeled conveyance, and referring to some things as e-bikes and then making rules for e-bikes doesn't make any sense in a time in our society when we're getting all kinds of conveyances invented. There are people who are riding electrified
Skateboards.
hoverboards and two-wheeled vehicles like skateboards. There's all kinds of devices being ridden. I think it would be very useful if the county were to make it a requirement that any wheeled vehicle have a bell or a horn or another noisemaker attached to it, so that the rider has a way of making a noise to let somebody know. Many of these electric bikes are so absolutely silent that they can come whizzing by you at 25 or so miles an hour, and there's no way to hear them coming. That needs to be dealt with. Rental businesses, and Max seems to be quite familiar with this. He's been in this business for some time, and I think that requiring rental businesses to have a noise-making device installed, at least on vehicles that are intended to be ridden on the pathways. Backcountry trails are another thing entirely. But the last thing I'd like to say is that perhaps the county might consider making a leaflet available that may be called Trails Are for Everyone leaflet, that point out the courtesy and the requirements, and asking people to please let walkers know when they're passing them would be a start in the right direction. That leaflet could be prepared and given to everyone who's renting bicycles. It could be posted on the along the pathways. I don't think anyone who is riding bicycles are going to search on the internet for what the rules are in the county or in the state or anything else.
Okay, thank you, John. Your time was up.
What?
Thank you, John. Your time was up.
My time's up. Okay.
A little while ago.
Hope that's helpful.
That's good. Thank you. Good points. Let's go to Helen Neff.
Okay, am I unmuted? You guys can hear me?
You're on.
Okay, thanks. Sorry, I'm not there in person, out of town. Excuse me. Thank you, Denise, for that really good presentation and all your photos and captions. Right now, I just think the situation is so confusing, and listening to everyone speak, it is just confusing. No bikes are allowed on the pathways on State Route 28. No bikes, whether they're motorized or not. They're supposed to ride in the road. As Denise pointed out, the width of the bike lane is not safe in parts of State Route 28 through our town, through our quote, walkable, unquote, town center per TRPA. The safe width, according to what I've read, is between 5 and 6 feet. Their bike lanes are addressed in the Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices, the MUTCD. I kind of hesitate to bring that up because there are other things in that manual that are not not my favorite rules and regulations, but there are uniform regulations, and usually NDOT follows that to a T. I don't know why they don't follow it for the bike lanes on State Route 28. But I would say just right now, the whole situation is confusing. You can't ride your bike on the pathways on 28, but you can on Village, you can on Lakeshore, you can where the pathway exists on Northwood and Southwood, and somehow that needs to be clarified, including Rhonda's very good points about electrical vehicles on the pathways. They were not built for any electrical vehicles. And I've said this so many times, I'm just going to say it again. To make our community safe, the speed limit on State Route 28 needs to be reduced, and the speeds on other streets need to be enforced. Otherwise, none of our streets are safe for cyclists or pedestrians. And one last thing on, I think it was Denise, your idea regarding a video. It might be worth checking with the Lake Tahoe Bike Coalition. They're based in South Lake Tahoe, and they may already have video. I'm not so sure, but I know they do a lot of safety issues. They're the organization that does the maps on the bike lanes around the lake. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Okay,
Jean?
who?
Jean?
Jean.
Oh, Jean, thank you. And, yeah, Jean, would you give us
Can
your
you hear
whole?
me?
Yes, would you give us your whole name, please?
Sure, Jeannie or Alana. Are you ready?
Okay.
Okay. Hi, my name's Jeannie or Alana. I'm from Big Blue Bike Rentals at the Hyatt. We agree with this, all the wholeheartedly with the speakers that the folks who haven't ridden in a while and have no bike expertise should not be on Class 3 e-bikes. Big Blue Bike Rentals, we rent all the regular bikes and kids' bikes and all of that stuff, but we also rent pedal assist e-bikes. The bike is not powered by a throttle in your hand. Pedal assist e-bikes are only powered by the rider pedaling. So our pedal assist e-bikes are Class 1, and we again agree that there's a difference, and safety is a big point why we don't have throttle or high speed e-bikes. Like the Tunnel Creek speaker, we have a rental orientation and go over the map and the bike. Our bikes are outfitted with safety bells. So we do show them how to use the gears, the brakes, and the safety bell before they depart. So they should be ringing that bell if they're sharing the path with pedestrians and they need to pass. Because of our Hyatt location, and really just for rider safety, we don't recommend any other ride than just going up to the East Shore Trail. So it involves a left turn onto Lakeshore, the quick jigger over to Selby, and then back onto Lakeshore, and then the right out to the East Shore Trail out to the beach. We're definitely here to, have safe riders. We give a nice lengthy orientation. There's maps on their handlebars. Most of our riders are families. They're not trying to go out there and win the Tour de France, but I want you all to have my info. So if there's anything that we could do better, we're happy to improve that. That's all. I just wanted to say hi.
So thank you, Jean. We appreciate your interest in attending tonight and listening to what the community has to say.
Thank you.
All right, Chris, did you have another comment?
Yeah.
Okay, Chris Wood.
Chris Wood, Jeannie, from the CAB, and thank you very much for participating. Because I suspect that many of the e-bikes on that portion of Lakeshore pathways from the Hyatt to the East Shore Trail are coming from your shop, and there may be others. I don't want to say all of them are, but yeah, my question really is, what do you have a standard orientation of a minute or two orally with pamphlets or YouTube or whatever for these renters about what to do on these pathways when they come to clusters of pedestrians and how to negotiate that? What, yeah, that's my buzzer.
No, it's not.
No. it's not.
Anyway, so that's the end of my question. No, can you answer that question, please? Thank you.
Sure. Is my audio still on?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, exactly. We do that. First, we go over the map just as they understand where they are, how to get where they're going. Once the whole map part, the session indoors is done, we're taking them outside and showing them the bicycles. The Hyatt itself has its own rules where we have to walk the bikes across the street to get onto the bike path. So they're already starting with that information of this is a shared use path. You need to behave and not, ride up on pedestrians behind them. We also have a little info panel. Our map is mounted on the handlebars, and on the backside has safety information that we show them during the second half of the orientation when they're out there on the bikes. And yes, you're right. There's more than just us out there. I think there's now probably 3-4 rental companies. I don't know if everyone's here. But I know that we use these steps. We train our staff thoroughly. Everyone has to go through an orientation to rent a bike with us. Absolutely.
A follow-up question again, Chris Wood. So do you ever direct your renters to using the road bike path? Or I should call it the bike lane on Lakeshore Boulevard to head out to the East Shore Trail?
No, the bike path. We recommend the bike path to stay on the path.
The multi-use pedestrian bike path, that's how
Yes.
you direct them.
Absolutely. Yes.
And is there a reason you don't say, hey, there is a bike lane that you could use?
I think just safety, we just generally don't like people to be that close to cars. I've actually been rear-ended on that road in a car, so I know how fast some people take that road, and we don't want that to happen to any of our cyclists. So we really want them to stay on the shared use path.
So if the county came along and said, all right, all bikes are gonna have to be on the bike lane on Lakeshore Boulevard, that would be contrary to your concerns for your customers. Is that correct?
Yeah, it wouldn't be ideal. There's people with, kids on bikes. When there's a family, if there's 2 parents, we try to have them sandwich the kids in the middle. It's not ideal because, the way kids ride, sometimes they're kind of wavy, as you know. There's also people with baby seats and baby trailers, and, I just kind of shudder when that stuff is next to cars myself personally, but it can be done. I think there would have to be great amendment to the bike lane as far as like paint and, separation. There's, if you go to Europe and stuff, they have great ideas for how to do that so that you can have a car next to a bike without it being pretty terrifying. Right now, I don't think it's quite wide enough.
Do you have any idea how many of your renters are?
Chris, we need to get back to the trail issues.
This is not the trail issue.
Well, it's a back and forth conversation with a public member. It needs to be with our presenter Denise.
Is it not permitted to talk to the public? I thought we were gathering data
Yeah.
to pass on to the commission.
We are gathering information, but it should be geared towards Denise and asking those questions because she is the presenter on the agenda.
I don't disagree with you, but we have here somebody who's in the business of renting bicycles in town and is part of one of the stakeholders in this issue. We don't often get those people here to talk to us. Anyway, I will
in a
stop.
sense,
I
she
will
was
stop.
invited here to more or less participate in the presentation. So I think we could cheat a little bit on that one. It's not cheating. She's part of the presentation.
Okay.
So, okay.
Anyway, I forgot what my question is, and that's probably just as healthy. So thank you very much for taking the questions.
I have
Thank you.
All right,
a
Denise.
final comment. Denise Davis. I wanted to let everyone know that I did invite Ted, who is the owner of Vista Trail Bikes, to join us this evening. He has an emergency personal situation going on, so he's not able to join us tonight, but he was hoping to be here to also participate.
I've talked with Ted several times. He's good. All right. So I would like to wrap this up with some sense of where we go from here. So Pam had an excellent suggestion. I didn't comment on it at the time. But basically, this is a multi-agency issue. We are advertising something we don't really have and endangering our tourists as well as ourselves. So we probably do want to put something together and put it in front of, let's start with Alexis. So Denise, can you pull together notes from here? And we can, I'll help you write that. We can co-write that. When I say we can co-write that, I'll add to what you start with, okay? But let's get that to Alexis. Alexandra, if you can let her know that this is coming and give her a feel for what came up tonight. I think we've got some good suggestions. As I indicated earlier, we have a real infrastructure problem here. These roads were built years before the traffic included a lot of bicycles. 28 was built as strip malls, which means we have, just for the record, 39 driveways between the roundabout and I think it's Country Club. 19 on one side, 20 on the other, so 39 opportunities to get killed if you're riding in the bike lane or walking on the pedestrian path. Those are big long-term issues that we need to get going on. But let's see what we can do for the signage, some of the low-hanging fruit, and I do want to check with Alexis. My understanding is Lakeshore Boulevard is going to have a real bike lane installed this summer. So the weather is clearing. I'm hoping to see that. All right, that's all the comments there. So let's move on to agenda item number 8, the Neighborhood Development Hub. And I have to apologize to Alexandra here. I should have introduced her and let everybody know that she's actually here at the library tonight. And also she had wanted an opportunity to describe Wordly, which I said we would do at the beginning of the meeting, and then I just stomped all over that. So my apologies, Alexandra, but if you can take care of that as well as the Neighborhood Hub.
Yeah, absolutely. So the Neighborhood Development Hub, we go over every month just to see if there are any developments upcoming for this area. I'll go ahead and share my screen just to make sure everyone can see what I'm looking at as well. So the only thing that I saw that popped up, and I believe I reviewed it last month as well, was the Sky Taverns trails. But this occurred on December 16th, 2024. You still have the opportunity to submit feedback, and if you want to see how that development went, there is a meeting summary as well as comment cards, an audio, and an applicant presentation. I don't believe there is any, that's the one I was clicking on. But if you guys have any that you are interested in hearing more about, I also believe we had either Article 610 pop up recently or Article 904. Let me just check the date on those. Perfect. So Article 904 for nonconformance popped up on February 26, 2025. So right after our meeting last month. Again, you can submit feedback. There was a meeting summary and a recording. If you want more information on that, they should be adding a link here for the article information so you guys can get more information. But if anyone wants more, please let me know and I'll make sure to send you that directly via email. The other thing I wanted to share with this group is, of course, Wordly. And so we're trying to give individuals other ways to communicate or engage with Washoe County. So Wordly is, I'm sorry, what was that?
Are you guys hearing her well enough? Or is online, can you hear Alexandra?
Well, we can't talk to you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
Sorry.
perfect.
Good.
Okay. Wordly is a program, it's a language use program. And so we use it in our chambers. If anyone has been to our chambers recently, it's for individuals who need either translation services, so if English isn't their first language, but they still want to participate, as well as individuals that are hard of hearing or can't see the screen. They can scan the QR code in the room and it will play on their mobile device or whichever device that they're using. If they have headphones, they can hear audio, as well as seeing the translation or the words on their own screen. So it's a little bit easier for them to follow along and be a part of the meeting. And we want to make sure everyone has equal access to participate. The third thing I would say is we added this at the request of Commissioner Andriola, but we wanted to share with everyone whenever there are board and commission openings. Right now there is 2 openings, one for the Board of Adjustment and one for the Planning Commission, but they are for District 4. I'm still sharing it in case you guys have friends, family that do live in District 4. That encompasses Sparks, Hidden Valley, Spanish Springs, and East Truckee Canyon. But we're looking for individuals in those unincorporated areas to serve on both of those boards. And lastly, I will share, we just launched our engagement pages. We have one specifically for Incline Village and Crystal Bay. And so I will share my screen one more time so you guys can see what that looks like. Alrighty, so this is our community input pages. They are roughly designed around our different CAB areas, although they may not necessarily pertain to the CAB. It could be that we get feedback on certain things, like it could be creating a bike video and we decide as a county that's something that we can do and we're able to do, and so we create that. That wouldn't necessarily be something that we could present at the CAB, but it might just be something that kind of lives on, as something that's posted to our website. This is where we want people to continue to engage with us. The idea is it's 24/7. Anytime you have an idea or input, you can go ahead and engage with Washoe County. So if you click into Incline Village specifically, it has the CAB meeting dates, and I'll post more as they are posted online, as well as the schedule for Q2. It has the resident feedback survey. And then in the future, we are looking at doing idea boards and discussion topics, which are moderated by Washoe County, but it's basically like a more focused Facebook group where you can upvote ideas, or you can provide different ideas of things you want to see out in the community and the CAB for Washoe County to do. But we are going to be tracking this feedback and again, sharing it in different ways and channels. So when you go to the Incline Village resident input portal, it just lets you know that, hey, we want to hear from you on matters that are important. Share any topics, ideas, or questions that you have pertaining to your area within Washoe County, and we'll receive this feedback. And we're going over this weekly as a team to see if there are things that are actionable that we can either bring again to the CAB or in other avenues. So with that, those are my engagement opportunities and the Neighborhood Development Hub. If you guys have any questions.
Okay, I see a hand up from John Davidson.
It was Pamela, I believe, but.
Well, Pamela's over here, John's over here. Okay, so let's go with Pamela Tigdinos.
Yes. Just wanted to let you know, Alexandra, I think this is fabulous. I really want to commend you and the county. It's another opportunity for us to stay connected and provide input. I did have one question regarding the development that you showed, the development hub. We understand that there is one property, the Waldorf Astoria development, that is going through its second foreclosure. And I just wondered if the county had any updates for Crystal Bay and Incline Village. This seems to be a problematic concern, among other things, because it's a bit of a fire hazard. And I just didn't know if the county had any updates in terms of enforcement or timelines. They've obviously gone through one foreclosure. This is a second. It would be interesting because it's a pretty significant property right in the middle of our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Pamela. I don't have that information with me, but I wrote down your question, and I'll get I believe I have your email information. I'll get the answer back to you, or I'll provide that as an update at our next CAB.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, let's move on to item number 9, minutes for January. Approving the minutes.
I have no discussion.
Okay. Could I have somebody
Make a motion.
make a motion?
I make a motion that we approve the Incline Village Crystal Bay meeting minutes from the session of January 27, 2024.
Second?
Second.
Denise seconds it. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, opposed? Nobody. All right, great. Let me ask a question here. We got the minutes for February pretty late. And so we really haven't had a chance to get to those. Are we basically going to run on a 1 month behind schedule? Is that the best we can do?
We could probably, no, I'm not sure why we got those ones so late.
Okay.
But we should be able to address both of the minutes in the next meeting. So we should.
All right, so we should get the minutes for this meeting. I would say within a week or 10 days, maybe.
I would say
10 days of the meeting, and then Chris can get it out to us, and that gives us a week or so to get back. So that would be good.
That'd be Japan of all
Okay.
places in the next week or two. So,
Oh, goody.
yeah, so it's not gonna be very convenient to be shooting these out to
Okay.
everybody. How about can you just turn it around, flip it to everybody? I mean, that's
Yeah,
all
I can
do.
flip it to everybody.
Yeah.
How well I can consolidate it back, I don't know.
Oh, don't worry about that.
I used to be good at that, but.
I'll be back by mid-April.
Oh, okay, I can do that. All right,
Just
so
flip it out. That's
I'll
all.
just flip it out. So if you'll send those to me, we'll get those out. So that takes care of the minutes. And by the way, oh, it doesn't. Oh, we have another comment.
I meant to ask this during the discussion. Isn't it January 27th of 2025?
It should be.
Oops, yes.
Did I say 24? I amended
Well,
the motion.
it is,
accordingly.
it's on the agenda incorrectly, so.
Yep.
Well, you know how the years are, they just roll by.
So do I need to formally amend the motion?
Yes.
Okay,
and
so
seconded and all in favor, yes. Okay, so next. All right. Board member announcements, item number 10, agenda item 10, Denise.
I just wanted to remind everyone that the public comment period is open for the Sand Harbor Master Plan. We did public comment last fall. They have gone through all of that, and they have come up with a proposal for what they would like to do as far as improving the Sand Harbor experience. And so the public comment period is open. I don't have that URL with me right now, but I'm sure if you Google Sand Harbor Master Plan, that page will come up. And it gives a very extensive history of, you know, where did Sand Harbor come from, its life through the years, and some thoughts as to how to keep it useful for all of us in the future. So.
Great, thank you for that. Any other board announcements? All right, then we are to item 11, which is general public comment. To close, and lo and behold, Aaron is back up.
Aaron Vanderpool, I just had a thought on if any flyers are ever made for the trails usages and stuff, maybe something in there that says, if you disobey the law or rules, then it just ruins it for everybody. Because that's usually the case with everything, right? There's one person that ruins it for everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Roxanne.
Yes.
I have a public comment.
I'm sorry?
I have a public comment.
Okay, Alexandra has a public comment.
Alexandra Wilton for the record. Two things. One, I wanted to announce next month's potential topic.
Good.
Which I believe is the Main Street program,
No,
because her birthday's in June.
That's
She
May.
wanted to do.
we have April.
Oh,
yet
April,
to
I'm
go.
sorry. April. My goodness.
April is the fire.
Oh, I'm a couple months ahead. Okay.
Yes.
So April, we are looking to, and I'm confirming some of the details, but we're looking to do defensible space and home hardening. with North Lake Tahoe Fire Protection District and UNR's Living with Fire. And so that is potentially upcoming in April. I did also want to, and I'm not sure if you want to open it back up to item number 10, but May, we have the Washoe Tahoe Academy, whose one of their last sessions is on the same night as the CAB. And so I wanted to take it to the CAB to determine if anyone was looking to participate in the Washoe Tahoe Academy. If not, if any of you felt like it was a conflict, whether or not we wanted to keep the meeting as is,
Yeah.
move it, or explore any other options.
I am thinking about it. This is Roxana, but I would not move the CAB. I'll just miss that session. So, I'll do homework online or something. Okay. All right. Any other announcements? And my apologies for, not remembering. Thank you for remembering to, promote the next one. I really do want to, promote this notion of, home hardening. If you're not familiar with that, I've been watching a number of videos on it, and I am planning this summer to get out with 1/16 inch screen and go around to all of my events and things like that to deal with it. Here is a chance to ask local people what kind of vegetation they would recommend if we want to plant, because all the videos I'm seeing are in Marin County, and that doesn't work. So I'm hoping for that, and I would really encourage you to get your friends and neighbors out to participate in this. It is, now that we are getting some movement on evacuation, a key thing is for us to contribute by doing everything we can to make sure that our houses are as fireproof as they can be, because that makes a huge difference when a fire comes through. So I think that is it. We are ready to adjourn. Motion?
Move to adjourn.
Second. All in favor? Aye. And we are adjourned. Thank you. And it is 7:34.